The midday sun blazed over Manhattan as the studio lights of The View flickered on inside ABC's bustling headquarters. The producers were buzzing, anticipation thick in the air. Today's guest wasn't a regular liberal darling. It was Karoline Leavitt, the bold and unapologetically conservative White House press secretary under President Trump. Her appearance had been teased all week, framed as a conversation, but everyone knew it was going to be a showdown. Joy Behar adjusted her red-framed glasses backstage, glancing once more at her notes. Her lips pursed in irritation. "She's just another MAGA puppet," she muttered. "Let's see if she survives 5 minutes in front of me." The stage manager gave the countdown. 3, 2, we're live. Intro music faded. Whoopi Goldberg made a quick intro, but it wasn't long before Joy Behar cut in with her usual bluntness. "We've got Karoline Leavitt with us today. She works for Donald Trump, and frankly, I don't know how she sleeps at night." The audience laughed. Karoline smiled, poised and deliberate, wearing her signature navy blazer and silver cross necklace. "Thanks for the warm welcome, Joy," she said, her tone sugary and razor-sharp. "And don't worry, I sleep just fine, especially knowing I fight for truth while you peddle narrative." The room shifted, a subtle tension. The crowd quieted just enough. Joy blinked, thrown for a second. "You come in here talking about truth, but your administration is built on lies, election denial, fake patriotism, culture wars." Karoline raised her hand. "Enough with the lies, Joy," she said, voice firm. "You and your colleagues attack middle America daily. You call people racist for loving their country. You mock religion, you mock families, and you hide behind progress while silencing anyone who dares to disagree." Joy scoffed. "Are you done?" Karoline leaned in. Not until I say what millions of Americans think, but you won't let them say. You sit in this studio protected by applause and camera angles, pretending you speak for the people. But here's the truth, you don't speak for us. You've become the voice of the elite, disconnected from real Americans. The audience stirred. Some clapped, some gasped. Karoline continued, calm but blistering. "I came here today not to make friends, but to say directly what you won't hear in your bubble. Your era is ending. The days of mocking, censoring, and shaming conservatives are over. We're not afraid anymore." Joy's eyes narrowed, but she was silent for once. And just like that, the tone of the show had changed. Joy Behar leaned forward, red-framed glasses now resting at the tip of her nose like a battle flag. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, how dramatic!" she snapped, voice thick with sarcasm. "A 20-something-year-old Trump loyalist walks in and tells a 30-year veteran of media that my time is up. How original." A few claps from the audience followed, but they were hesitant, uncertain even. Karoline didn't flinch. "I don't care how long you've been sitting in that chair," Karoline said coolly, her hands folded on the table. "Decades of television don't excuse a decade of arrogance, and they definitely don't give you the right to shame Americans for not agreeing with your worldview." Joy chuckled coldly. "Oh, please, no one's being shamed. We're just tired of conspiracy theories, tired of anti-science, tired of pretending that shouting freedom justifies ignorance." Karoline's expression sharpened. "No, what you're tired of is being challenged." A pause, that one landed. "You're tired of Americans pushing back when you tell them their values are bigotry, that their religion is dangerous, or that their patriotism is performative. You brand every opposing opinion as hate speech, just to shut it down. That's not progress, Joy. That's authoritarianism with lipstick." Joy opened her mouth, but Karoline kept going, measured, unfazed. "You mock working-class parents for not wanting drag shows in kindergarten. You roll your eyes when someone says they believe in God and country. You call them stupid, backward, uneducated, and you do it with that smug smile and canned laughter like it's just comedy. But people are watching, Joy. They see it." Silence. Not from everyone. Some in the audience began clapping, louder this time. Karoline glanced toward them, not to soak in applause but to drive the point deeper. They know who you are now, and more importantly, they know who they are, and they're done letting people like you define them. Whoopi tried to cut in. All right, let's... But Joy wouldn't let it end there. She leaned back in her chair, her voice rising. You want to talk about America? Let's talk about the president you defend daily. A man who lies, who insults, who's under investigation. Karoline cut in like a blade. And yet he never called half the country a basket of deplorables. He never said that believing in faith and family made you a threat to democracy. More claps. Joy's jaw clenched. She hadn't expected this kind of blowback, not in her house. But Karoline wasn't done. She looked straight into the camera, voice calm, precise. This isn't about left versus right anymore. It's about those who want to divide us and those who've had enough of the lies. As the segment of The View returned from commercial break, the mood in the studio thickened. Joy Behar adjusted her red-framed glasses, clearly eager to pounce. The audience, sensing the tension, leaned in. Let's not pretend you're a saint, Karoline, Joy began, her tone drenched in condescension. You come from the same Trump machine that made cruelty a campaign strategy. Karoline Leavitt's expression didn't budge. Her posture remained firm, blazer perfectly pressed, silver cross necklace catching the light. She calmly picked up her glass of water, took a small sip, and set it down with slow, deliberate grace. I'm not here to play your morality games, Joy, Karoline said, voice steady. I'm here because the people you look down on, the factory workers, the small-town families, the veterans, deserve someone to speak for them, not someone who rolls their eyes on daytime television. The crowd responded with a ripple of cheers, surprising the co-hosts. Sonny Hostin whispered something off mic. Joy pressed on. Oh, please don't lecture me on the forgotten American, she snapped. You work in the White House now, remember? You're not exactly blue-collar anymore. Karoline nodded. True, I've worked my way here, from New Hampshire to Washington, and every step I took was earned, not gifted through fame or a studio contract. A gasp spread through the audience, low, sharp. Even Whoopi Goldberg, usually unfazed, glanced up from her cue cards. Joy leaned back, lips tight. You think you're so special because you can throw around tough words? Karoline smiled, but it wasn't warm. No, Joy. I think I'm effective because I don't hide behind applause lines and rehearsed outrage. I came here knowing exactly who I'd face, and I'm not the one losing composure right now. The tension became electric. Even the control room was silent, cutting between the two women like a prize fight. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but paused, visibly recalibrating. Karoline folded her hands on the table. You've spent years talking down to conservatives on this show, but what you're really scared of, Joy, is that I'm not afraid of you. And I'm not here to be polite. I'm here to push back. The camera panned to the audience. Some clapped, others looked stunned. The energy had shifted. Joy Behar, the daytime titan, had just been met with someone who wouldn't blink, and Karoline Leavitt was just getting started. Karoline's final line hung in the air like smoke after a cannon blast. Joy's smile cracked just enough to reveal the tension beneath it. The producers in the control room whispered urgently, debating whether to cut to commercial, but the audience was glued. Push back? Joy repeated, forcing a laugh. You mean parrot talking points from a twice-impeached former president? Karoline leaned in, voice lower but razor sharp. I don't parrot anyone. I think for myself, which is more than I can say for most of the legacy media. The crowd stirred again. A few bold claps rang out. Joy's eyes narrowed. Don't get sanctimonious. You're a political operative, trained to distract, deflect, and divide. And you're a professional cynic, Karoline fired back, her tone turning surgical. You've made a career out of mocking Americans who don't think like you. You say you're for women, but only the women who agree with you. That line landed hard. Even Sonny Hostin's smirk faltered. Joy tried to regain footing. You think this is about me? Honey, I've been doing this since you were in braces. I've survived worse than you. Karoline raised a brow. Maybe, but you haven't faced someone like me, young, unapologetic, and not afraid to call out this smug moral superiority for what it is, arrogance in disguise. The audience let out a collective, "Ooh!" Joy scoffed and waved toward the camera. Well, congratulations. You've got your viral moment. That's what this is about, right? Karoline sat back, voice composed. This is about truth. And sometimes the truth doesn't come from the usual places or the usual faces. For a moment, the room was still. Even Whoopi didn't interject. Joy opened her mouth, then closed it. The moderator's voice finally broke in from offstage. We'll be right back after this. The camera lights dimmed, and the applause sign blinked uncertainly. A few audience members clapped. Others just watched. Karoline leaned back in her seat, unfazed. Joy Behar looked straight ahead, jaw clenched. This wasn't just another guest segment. This was a reckoning. Backstage during the commercial break, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Producers darted between crew members, whispering into headsets. The show's executive producer, Dana, glanced nervously at the live feed. "She's not backing down," she muttered. On stage, Karoline sat composed, dabbing her lips with a napkin. Joy Behar, by contrast, leaned toward the table, lips pursed, fingers tapping. A stagehand approached Karoline with a makeup sponge. She waved it off. "No need," she said. "Let the sweat show. It's more honest." The cameras rolled again. Anderson Cooper's pre-recorded segment had bought the team 2 minutes, but now it was back to the real show. Whoopi tried to lighten the mood. "Okay, folks," she said, smiling through the weight in the room. "We're back. It's been a lively morning." Joy Behar jumped in before anyone else could. "Karoline, you said earlier you were here for truth. So here's one. Donald Trump lied. Repeatedly, about everything from the election to COVID to the economy. And you defend him." Karoline didn't flinch. "I defend the voters he empowered, the working class, the farmers, the parents, the Americans this show ridicules." Joy laughed sarcastically. "You mean the Americans you keep dividing with culture wars, drag shows, books, bathrooms? You think those are priorities?" Karoline's eyes narrowed, her voice colder. "When parents are being labeled as domestic threats for speaking at school board meetings, yes, Joy, that's a priority." That hit hard. Joy fired back. "Oh, come on, that's a distortion." "No," Karoline cut in, now leaning forward. "You distort, you mock, you roll your eyes every time a conservative mom speaks up. You act like they're uneducated, but they're smarter than you think, and they're done being silent." The audience murmured. This wasn't the usual light banter. This was a political firestorm aired live, and Karoline was feeding the flames with precision. Joy shook her head, trying to smirk. "And what, you're their savior now?" Karoline looked her dead in the eye. "Number, I'm their microphone." The silence was deafening. The studio lights caught the glint of her cross necklace as she turned to the audience, scanning faces, watching reactions. Joy Behar glanced off camera for support. But none came. This wasn't going how she planned. And Karoline knew it. Karoline's last words echoed like a drumbeat. "I'm their microphone." The phrase didn't just sting, it stuck. Joy Behar shifted uncomfortably, her signature confidence visibly rattled. She wasn't used to guests like this. Not ones who didn't flinch. Not ones who turned her own format against her. Sonny Hostin finally broke the silence. "You keep saying you speak for the silent majority, Karoline. But where do you draw the line? Are you okay with banning books, silencing teachers?" Karoline turned to her calmly. "No one's banning books. They're removing sexually explicit content from elementary school libraries. There's a difference. And if that offends you, maybe the problem isn't the parents." A few claps scattered through the crowd, unusual for the View audience. Whoopi narrowed her eyes. "So you're saying public schools should cater to one group's beliefs?" Karoline's tone was firm, unwavering. "I'm saying schools should focus on education, not ideological grooming. That's not one group's beliefs, Whoopi. That's basic parental rights." Joy scoffed again. You know what this sounds like. Fear-mongering. Karoline tilted her head. Fear of what? That parents might want to say in their kids' education? That's not fear. That's democracy. The tension in the room crackled. A boom mic dipped too low from the ceiling as even the crew forgot to stay steady. Joy tried to regain ground. You talk about democracy, but your side tried to overturn it on January 6th. Karoline straightened. And your side ignored violent riots across 2020, burned cities, ruined businesses, ruined lives. Let's not play selective outrage, Joy. A small gasp rose from the audience. It wasn't often that someone mentioned that on The View. Joy's eyes flared. You're deflecting. No, Karoline said, voice like a scalpel. I'm reminding you that the truth doesn't only live on your side of the aisle. The air turned ice cold. Even Whoopi leaned back in her chair. Karoline folded her hands on the table. I came here expecting disagreement. I didn't expect the complete inability to acknowledge that the other half of this country exists, and they're watching. That last line landed with surgical force. The studio audience fell silent again. Joy Behar, for the first time in the segment, didn't have a comeback. The lights were still rolling, but The View had lost control of the narrative, and Karoline Leavitt had just seized it. The silence dragged for a moment longer, pregnant with discomfort. Then Joy Behar shifted in her seat, forced a chuckle, and turned toward the audience. Well, I guess we struck a nerve. Karoline didn't even blink. No, you struck the truth. Big difference. Whoopi attempted to diffuse the atmosphere. Let's move the conversation forward. Karoline, you're clearly passionate, but passion without compassion is just noise. Do you think your rhetoric sometimes goes too far? Karoline leaned back slightly, adjusting her blazer. I think your side has confused assertiveness with aggression. Just because I speak clearly doesn't mean I'm being cruel. Maybe you're just not used to conservatives who fight back. That hit differently. The crowd responded with a mixed wave of quiet claps and awkward shifting. Sonny Hostin jumped in, grasping at control. You've made your points, but this is still a daytime talk show. We try to have conversations here. Karoline's smile was polite but sharp. Then why is it that when a conservative woman sits in this chair, it becomes a firing squad instead of a conversation? That question wasn't rhetorical. It was loaded. And suddenly a new tension swept across the set. Not hostility. Something closer to reflection. Joy leaned in, trying one more jab. You're acting like a victim again, Karoline. Karoline's expression hardened. I'm not a victim. I'm just not going to sit here and pretend that your double standard isn't obvious. If I were a liberal woman with these views, you'd be nodding along. The camera zoomed in just slightly, catching the firm lines around her eyes, the steel behind the poise. Joy sat back, arms crossed. She looked toward the producers just off stage, but no rescue came. No teleprompter script could fix this. This wasn't the typical exchange. It was a chess match, and Karoline was playing the long game. Whoopi, to her credit, tried one more olive branch. Let's give her credit. She showed up. She didn't dodge questions, and clearly she's not afraid. Karoline glanced at her. Respect goes both ways. I knew I'd walk into a storm. I just didn't realize you'd all be so surprised when I brought lightning. A few in the audience let out a stunned "ooh," while others just watched, riveted. Joy Behar looked down, lips pursed tight. She knew what had just happened. Karoline hadn't just held her ground. She'd taken it. The final segment was moments away, but no one was pretending anymore. Not the hosts, not the audience, not Karoline. The makeup artist didn't even step in during the break. No one wanted to break the tension with a puff of powder. When the cameras resumed, the usual upbeat music didn't quite land. It was background noise now. Something had shifted permanently. Anderson Cooper, brought in live via satellite for this final panel segment, appeared on the studio screen. I've been watching backstage, he said. And Karoline, whatever people think of your politics, you're undeniably commanding attention. Karoline nodded once, not smug, but focused. That's because the stakes are real, Anderson. This isn't just TV for me. I'm not here to sell a memoir or relive glory days. I'm here to challenge the narrative that's held this country hostage for a decade. Anderson raised an eyebrow. You're referring to what exactly? Karoline's voice was firm. The illusion that media elites and Hollywood personalities speak for all Americans. They don't. They speak for themselves, and people like Joy Behar amplify it. Joy raised a hand, chuckling bitterly. You think I'm the voice of Hollywood? I've been doing this for 25 years. I've earned my place. Karoline didn't miss a beat. You've earned your platform, sure. But you use it to sneer at anyone who doesn't share your worldview. You treat average Americans like punchlines. Now, it wasn't just about politics. It was personal. Sonny tried to pivot. But you talk like you're the only one who cares about the country. Karoline turned to her, her eyes razor sharp. Number, I talk like someone who knows how much it hurts to be ignored, mocked, and told to sit down because you're not part of the club. A woman in the front row nodded. Subtly, but noticeably. Anderson leaned in again, curious. So what's your goal with moments like this? Karoline exhaled once. Then her tone softened, not weak, but grounded. To show that you don't have to be famous to be fearless. That you can be young, unapologetic, and still speak for millions who feel voiceless. I'm not here for applause. I'm here because silence doesn't serve anyone anymore. There was no clapping this time, just a quiet wave of realization washing through the studio. Even Joy Behar stayed quiet. She wasn't defeated, but she was clearly disarmed. And Karoline knew it. The final question came from a producer off camera, whispered into Whoopi's earpiece. She hesitated, then leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on the table. Karoline, she said, let's put politics aside for a moment. If you could say one thing to young women watching, conservative or liberal, what would it be? The tension shifted again, but this time into something heavier. Expectation. Eyes turned. Even Joy looked over with restrained curiosity, arms still crossed but eyebrows raised. Karoline didn't blink. She turned slightly toward the main camera. Her tone dropped, more measured, more intimate. I'd tell them not to wait for permission. Silence. I don't care what party you belong to. If you believe in something deeply, don't let anyone at this table or any screen or any classroom talk you out of it. You're going to be called names. You're going to be told you're too much or too intense or too angry. But don't shrink to make others comfortable. She leaned in. And if someone tries to laugh you off or mock your values, don't get even. Get better, sharper, stronger. Outlast them. That landed. The audience didn't erupt in applause, but they listened, and they respected it. Sonny Hostin surprisingly offered a slight nod. Whoopi looked thoughtful. Joy's lips parted like she might say something, but she didn't. Anderson, still watching from the monitor, cleared his throat. That's quite the message. Karoline's voice stayed low, steady. I've had to fight twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. That doesn't discourage me. It motivates me. Even Joy couldn't deny the moment. She gave a begrudging glance, then muttered, Well, at least you're not boring. Karoline smirked. You wouldn't have invited me if I were. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the credits began to roll. The music returned, but it no longer felt like filler. It was a cue. The conversation was ending, but the echo would linger. Karoline stood first. She didn't need a mic drop. She was the mic drop. Outside the studio, the air was thick with anticipation. Dozens of reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers waited behind barricades, phones raised, flashes firing. The moment Karoline Leavitt stepped through the glass doors, the crowd surged. Not with chaos, but with energy. She didn't flinch, no security detail, no entourage, just a black blazer, sharp eyes, and a cross necklace catching the light. One reporter shouted, Karoline, were you surprised by Joy Behar's reaction? She kept walking. Another. Did you expect to silence the entire panel? She paused at the steps, turned, faced the cameras. I didn't go there to silence anyone, she said calmly. I went there to make sure we were finally heard. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The use of we was deliberate, and it hit. Phones buzzed, tweets were already live. Karoline Leavitt just walked out of the View like she owns the place. Say what you want, but she showed up and didn't flinch. Inside the building, producers huddled around monitors watching the social media metrics spike. Karoline Unfiltered was trending. Conservative influencers called it a masterclass in composure and conviction. Even neutral journalists admitted it. Karoline Leavitt hadn't just held her own. She'd reset the tone of political discourse on mainstream television. Back at her car, she paused before getting in. A young woman in her 20s stood nearby, nervously holding her phone, half shaking. Miss Leavitt, I just wanted to say thank you. You said what a lot of us feel, but don't always know how to say. Karoline looked her in the eye. Then say it anyway, even if your voice shakes. The girl smiled. Karoline smiled back, got into the car, and drove off. Not as a guest who survived the panel, but as the woman who owned it. And as the headlines rolled in, left, right, and everything in between, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a viral moment, it was a reckoning. If this exchange taught us anything, it's that courage isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about standing firm when every voice in the room is against you. Karoline Leavitt didn't just defend her beliefs on national television. She challenged a system that too often silences dissenting views. Whether you agree with her politics or not, one thing is undeniable. She came prepared, stayed composed, and refused to be intimidated. This wasn't just a moment. It was a message. To everyone watching, speak up, stand your ground, and never let anyone tell you your voice doesn't matter. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss stories that push back, break through, and speak truth without apology.